Hello and welcome back to Glasgow Truth Group Radio. Today we'll be speaking to Franz, creator of the now famous Age of Transitions film and author of the book Revolve, Man's Scientific Rise to Godhood. We discuss the concept of transhumanism, converging technologies, and the ever-increasing technological revolution that we find ourselves in today. Okay, so we're here with Franz today. And I thought probably the best thing, again, to start the show with is just if Aaron can tell us a little bit about himself and where he's come from and how he's got into this kind of material, just for the people who might not know.
Sure. Well, my website's The Age of Transitions. It's the website's name is the same as my documentary film, The Age of Transitions. That's probably what people know best of what I've put out there. It's just an hour-long documentary about transhumanism, about singularity and eugenics and the connections there. And I've also got a book called Revolve that gets into these subjects as well, and that's on theageoftransitions.com. Before that, I mean, it's been a lifelong journey, as it is with everybody else. I just found myself face-to-face with this information, whatever you want to call the information, the truth movement or whatever. You know, there's so many different ways to label whatever this is that we're doing, but I found myself really getting deep into this stuff about 4 years ago, and you know, I've never turned back since, and it's been quite a journey, and I'm very excited to be here speaking with yourself, because I know you're doing the same thing as me, as we all are, all the listeners too.
Yeah, that's right. We've obviously got a lot in common, and that's one of the reasons I was really interested to talk to you about these kinds of things. But perhaps for people that don't know necessarily what transhumanism is, or maybe they've heard about it and they're not really sure, what it's all about and why we're talking about it. Do you think you could just give us in a nutshell, kind of a quick rundown on what transhumanism is and why it's so important to talk about?
Yes. Well, transhumanism is many things. The most commonly accepted definition of it now, the mainstream definition, is that it is all about the creation of things, high technologies such as artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, developing life extension therapies, cybernetics, things like chips, brain chips, of course, these sort of things, and how the creation of those sorts of converging technologies is beneficial, that we should be actively creating these things and applying them to our lives. And the transhumanist idea is that in doing this, this is the way to this is human progress. This is where we're going. This is the answer to evolution itself, actually. It's the way to take human evolution into human hands, kind of expedite the slow natural process of evolution and put it on the fast track. And with that, of course, the idea of transhumanism, it is not new, and it comes out of things like eugenics, and even the idea of evolution is, I mean, there's so many concepts that this ties into, but the mainstream idea, and transhumanism is steadily going mainstream now, is that it's all about these converging technologies, and that we should basically become post-human beings by becoming cybernetic organisms, putting all these technological upgrades, as they call them. Those are the words that they use to describe all these technologies, is upgrades. So that's what they think we should be doing to evolve our human species.
Yeah. It's something you're seeing a lot of in mainstream media at the moment. I mean, I'm sure people have noticed that. I mean, a lot of these big budget films of the last maybe sort of 10, 15, 20 years have been featuring quite a heavy use of these concepts, where man is merging with machine, or machine has overtaken man. And they've been coming out in shows like Star Trek, with the Borg. We've had, Terminator 2 and there's been so many others. Like more recently, we've had the Iron Man remakes, and then especially in the last kind of maybe year to 2 years, there's been a huge kind of surge of films that have all featured this kind of human upgrade where humans take the next step and merge with machine and become Superman, And a lot of this stuff I find tends to be directed towards the younger kids, because a lot of these are kind of comic remakes and classic kind of hero movies, Hollywood blockbuster hero movies. So it seems as if they're really trying to introduce these ideas to us in so many different areas, in what's often referred to as predictive programming. So, what would you have to say about that? Are there any sort of key movies that really stand out to you, or where do you see this going?
Yes, you're absolutely right in saying that there is a huge plethora of transhumanist-themed films at the moment. Of course, this isn't new. This is science fiction itself, but in the last couple of years, we have seen a big push, specifically with transhuman technologies. We can see specific things being promoted in specific movies. Like we've got artificial intelligence being promoted in films such as Eagle Eye, for instance. Very, and also the idea of like surveillance and government spying is very prevalent in that film. And that film, as with many, many others about transhuman themes, was produced with the help of the United States Air Force. The military is very big in with their entertainment liaison offices in creating these films, and you will find, with the Air Force in particular, that many transhumanist-themed films with artificial intelligence, robots, with the AIs, especially AI and robots, it seems like the Air Force is big on, because they also made the Transformers films. And again, with the comic book films, you mentioned comic books, and they're making tons of them. You'll notice, too, that with most of those films, they're actually about the military-industrial complex. Like with Iron Man, it's the creation of like this Superman. Well, it's a guy who has a military-industrial company, and that suit is like his weapon basically, and then he becomes a superhero through his military creation, etc., etc., etc. Same thing with the Incredible Hulk. It's they're doing genetic tests on this guy. It's again, and they're quite overt with the military aspect of things, and they even put things like high-tech weaponry. They put in that Hulk film. They put the sound cannons and things like that. So they put those elements in there as a bit of predictive programming, as I'm sure all of your listeners are aware of the idea of predictive programming, because that's what these movies are. But with the predictive programming, it's working on multiple different levels all at once. It's promoting the military, first of all. That's kind of the exoteric predictive programming for people just to ramp up military service. And then you also have the promotion of, their weaponry, just to get you your mind in line with the fact that those things are real. And if you see them in real life at some point, don't be surprised. We told you already. And also predictive programming with transhumanist themes telling you that, like, look, you're going to be interacting with machines soon. So we're going to be putting the main characters, they're going to be machines, and you're going to see humans and machines basically falling in love on screen, and you're seeing that over and over and over again now in movies.
Yeah. Obviously, that's the whole point of predictive programming is to make the public feel like basically that it's inevitable. So when these things do come into public domain and we start kind of interacting with them, or we start seeing them in real life or what have you. The idea of these films is to introduce those concepts so that, when this happens, people have just assumed subconsciously that, it was inevitable. I guess it was any way it could have gone, and of course, I think another interesting point that you raised there is the Pentagon connection to Hollywood, because basically, if you're making a film and you need military assistance with it for for planes and guns and soldiers and advice on explosions or what have you, you have to contact the Pentagon Liaison Office, or I think, what did you say, the Air Force? Or
Yeah. Well, each specific branch of the military has their own entertainment liaison office, as does the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, and some other federal agencies.
Yeah, that's right. Because I think the basic the rules are there, as far as I understand them from kind of the research I've done, is that if you want assistance from them, you have to portray the film in a way that favors the military, or else you're getting nothing, Yeah. And these guys will actually come and rewrite the script for you until they're satisfied that it portrays the military and the military agenda in the most favorable light possible. Is that right?
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, they have the ability to rewrite the script. They have the ability to create characters. They have the ability to change the story to however they want. And they do admit, to an extent, that, we're trying to promote our military agenda, which exoterically, again, is a good thing. Our military, it's the whole same old thing with how they legitimate wars, like, oh, we're out there doing a good thing. We have to be in Iraq. We have to be in Afghanistan. We have to be in, 150 countries? Well, they barely ever tell you they're in that many countries. It's always a focus on one little country or another. But the truth is we're in spread across the entire world. And the big propaganda push is to get us, the average people, to think that this is a good and wonderful thing, and that we're enlightening the world, that our military is some sort of enlightenment force to go bring democracy to the savages and whatnot. So it's the same deal with films as well. And yeah, they get to write in whatever they want.
Yeah, they really do. And obviously, we'll probably get into this a bit later on, but as we know, most of this kind of transhumanistic technology, the nanotechnology and biotechnology and this kind of thing is coming from the military-industrial complex, isn't it?
Yes, and that's a wonderful point, and that's one that I feel that is kind of the issue when it comes to talking about these technologies, and it's the one that always gets marginalized. It's the one that nobody wants to talk about. Like the official transhumanists, the ones who label themselves as such, they'll get up there and they'll talk about virtual reality and artificial intelligence and life extension, how it's the best thing ever and how we have to do it. They'll go on and on all day. They'll come up with all sorts of ideas and like basically sit up there and read you plots from science fiction films. It's the same thing. It's what they're doing. But when it comes to talking about the military connection to these things, and even talking about narrow AI systems that are fully entrenched in many different areas, from biological technology to policing and surveillance and things like this, they won't talk about those things. They won't talk about like the real practical issues. They won't talk about the military-industrial complex. They'll just talk about their little science fiction stories and say how wonderful it is all day, and say that if you're opposed to it, you're just wacky and stupid, and what could you be thinking? How could you even think that? So yeah, that's a real issue we have to drive home.
I was going to ask you, Aaron, for our listeners out there that really don't know too much about transhumanism, why should they be concerned about the direction of where things are going? Why should it be a bad thing?
Well, we should be concerned because transhuman technologies are being developed, and these things they're not totally science fiction. They're being sold through science fiction, but at the same time, they are real. And there are many government documents that detail this and talk about what should be done with them. And it's a real aspect of where the world is going. This transhumanist agenda is very much a real thing, and we have to understand what that means and where we're all going. So, I mean, it's about the alteration of our very genetics, of our very essence, our humanness. It's the changing of that, the remodeling of that. And so if that's going to happen, obviously we all have a vested interest in that. So this conversation has to be in the public, and it has to be open, and everybody has to really be aware of what these issues, where they came from, what they actually are, what the real issues involved are, and not be kind of sidetracked by fantastical speculation and things like that.
Yeah, that's right, because the bottom line is that people aren't being told the real story about this, are they? Because basically what we're getting pro-transhuman material through Hollywood, which is just advertised, just presented to you as being, it's part of the story, and technology is moving along. It's only natural that this would be included, and people don't really think about it too much, and it's all it's always to our benefit. It's always advantageous. It always helps us save the day, or be Superman, or live longer, or do amazing things in some virtual reality, like Neo from the Matrix. But what people aren't being told is where this technology is coming from, who's funding it, and why. And I think those are the biggest questions that people have to ask, because it's very easy to just dismiss people who are asking questions as Luddites or ultra conservatives or what have you. But the bottom line is that the real truth about this isn't being publicized. We're basically just getting PR, aren't we?
Yeah, absolutely. It's public relations all the way. And one of the marks of public relations is carbon copy news stories. This is how public relations firms operate. They have their clients, they work on their clients' behalf. They write up basically one general story that's beneficial to their client. In this case, let's say the client is, let's just say it's a company that wants to market implantable brain chips. And so the PR company that's working for this technology company will see to it that they place this one article, because all they have to do is write one article. They hand it out to different people that they know in different media outlets. So they'll hand it out to a newspaper, they'll hand it out to another newspaper, another one, they'll hand it out to a TV station, they'll hand it out to all these media people, which they're friends with. That's how PR works. So you basically just have to write up one story and then hand it out to a million different outlets, and then there you go. It's you're broadcasting your message, and you don't even have to overtly say, like with the story, like, this company's so great, they're making a brain chip. I mean, they do have many stories like this, but sometimes it gets even more involved with that. We see the big transhuman and singularity sales pitch PR pieces now in the forms of Ray Kurzweil's Singularity. You've probably seen this news story somewhere. It's like in Time, it's on TV, it's everywhere. So it's how PR works again is carbon copy news stories. They make one story, they go, okay, here it is, here's your outline. You can embellish it a little bits, but these are the points to hit. They send it out to all the media outlets, and then everybody in the world is now talking about Ray Kurzweil's Singularity because it's so intriguing, and and it works. That's how public relations works.
And of course he gets to show up on all these talk shows, and he gets to be the big hero coming out on stage, and the man of the future, leading us all towards this utopia. And and there's not a lot of real discussion that ever goes on in these situations, because basically you're looking at a guy who, in my opinion, has a rather large ego.
Yeah. Well, that's always the case with these spokesmen. You just find some guy who loves being in the spotlight and loves being the center of attention, and you can just throw the work of thousands, if not millions, of people onto this guy and look, this is his idea. Give me a break. He's the one guy that's making this happen. Come on, that's not how the world works.
He can be the front man for it all.
Yeah.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It really is.
So obviously basically what we're seeing is just is pro transhumanism from wall to wall. There is very little real discussion on what the pros and cons are. And of course, when these people do their PR stories, one thing that they'll often do, I've noticed, is that they'll have a little devil's advocate line somewhere in the middle, where it's kind of to appease the suspicious people, and it'll just be some really weak little stab at a possible problem with it, and then it'll be appeased by. But experts say, but experts say actually it's going to be okay, and the benefits outweigh the risks, and so it's incredible what can be done by omission, isn't it? In this way, how all the possible positives of this thing just get promoted through the roof. Talking especially in terms of giving sight to the blind, and that kind of thing. It's always marketed in that way. And then any possible problems are always just explained away by the Ray Kurzweil figure,
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a key aspect of the formula of public relations, that, you have to, because all these technologies are innately dangerous in many ways, and the normal person can pick up on that, and you have to appease them, be like, oh, it's all right. And it's also the creation of, overall with these PR pieces, it's the creation of this feeling of inevitability, in that whether it's good or bad, like you can't even stop it anyway. Like it's just progress, it's just science. Like, well, we started science a long time ago, we can't just stop it now. You know what I mean? Like this is the only way we can go. So definitely the creation of this feeling of inevitability is key.
Yeah. And another thing which I always find interesting, and I think it's something you brought up on a previous talk, was that the way that this predictive programming works is that they will, as you say, surround us with it and engulf us with it to the point where we've subconsciously and consciously grown to believe that it's absolutely inevitable. But people will notice that if you look at when this stuff was kind of first being brought into the mainstream through things like Star Trek and Terminator, that it was kind of a hellish situation. It was kind of a nightmare situation of like technology out of control, completely dehumanized, really horrible. Everyone hated it, and you'd wonder why would they be doing that? If they're trying to promote this technology, then why are they making it out to be so negative and scary in the films that they're funding? And one interesting point that you've brought up was that the reason they have to do this is because it's something of a kind of like a cathartic release for the public mind in a way. They've got to play out the worst fears first. They've got to get it out of everybody's systems, whilst at the same time making it seem inevitable, so that when the time comes for this stuff to come out into the public, the debate has been channeled into a very small area. So everybody's kind of gotten over the fears and has realized that, oh, well, if we don't have good AI, then we're going to have bad AI. So we better start making good AI to make sure that we don't have this Terminator 2 Borg situation on our hands. Or just
Yeah, that's the way it works. Absolutely. Because as we're saying, extremely intelligent AI systems that can self-replicate, or brain chips that we put in our brain, actual computer chips, they have staggering implications that any human being that hears them at first is going to be scared of them. And so you have to appease this fear. If your agenda is to eventually, like, okay, we're making these AIs, we're making these brain chips, we have to get people to accept them. Well, you have to deal with the fact that people are going to be reluctant to accept these ideas. They're like, no, that sounds horrible. Like, what are you crazy? Like, are you a mad scientist? What's the deal here? So again, you make the film that is the cathartic release, as you called it. And if we look at the Terminator series of films specifically, we can see this process quite clearly. You see the first Terminator film the Terminator machine, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's a terrible monster. It's a monster movie. And the monster is the AI machine. It just keeps coming. It keeps coming. It's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. It's going to kill you. And then at the end, they finally kill it. But then it comes back. And it comes back in the second film. And, well, how does it come back in the second film? We find the exact same monster character is now the savior hero character. So... psychologically, the way this works, we have to break down these movies in terms of our own how we view them psychologically, like the psychological effect they have on us. So the monster is no longer a monster; he's actually a hero, and that makes us go, oh, you know what, like. Maybe, but we still have the evil AI, which is an even more advanced version, but the way to defeat it, again, is with good AI, and this turns into the good AI versus bad AI, and the only answer then is not to completely ignore AI and say, you know what, well, let's just forget that, and let's develop some other kind of science. We don't really need AI anyway. The debate then becomes, well, how are we going to make good AI? Because AI could... clearly go bad, and we have to make it, so we have to... And there are specialists in this field of making benevolent AI. That this is actually like a field within the AI research community and making friendly AI. So there you have it.
There's another interesting concept in, or a theme rather, in the Terminator 2, is that John Connor doesn't have a father in that film. The father isn't present. Mm-hmm. And so the T-800 Schwarzenegger character serves to be the father in that film. So there's a lot of emotional triggering going on there for the child. You know, the child who's lost the father gets the father replaced by AI, and so the bond is created, you know?
Absolutely, yeah. They play to our innate, primitive drives and our survival instincts, and what we are as humans, like... These principles are well known and played to in film to, again, psychologically get the effect that they are going for. Yeah, so the machine becomes the father, becomes part of the family, so you associate with it. And the father traditionally is the protector. He's the guy who protects the family and the tribe and all that. So, you know, he's this machine is now our protector.
Yeah, that's right. So they really are very good at this, aren't they?
They are. Well, they're not afraid to tell you they're magicians, and they mean that.
Yeah, they really are. So obviously we've talked a little bit about how transhumanism is being marketed and presented to us through all these films, and I'd like to get back to that in a bit more detail later on because it connects to so many other things, but... For the meantime, I'd just like to talk a wee bit about the history of transhumanism, because that's something that you've definitely brought out well in your film and in your book. But for people who are listening and perhaps aren't familiar with either the film or the book, or maybe they've not looked that deeply into this, can you just give us a little bit of the history of where transhumanism actually comes from? Because it's got quite a long history, and it comes from a place... and a kind of group of ideologies that people might not suspect at first, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And the history can be traced back to what the basic idea of transhumanism even is now, which is to take evolution, human evolution, into human hands and make it speed up. So that is just looking at that aspect of transhumanism, we can go back in time to the idea of eugenics. And again, this has been said by many others as well. Sir Julian Huxley, first Director General of UNESCO, was the man who coined transhumanism in its modern sense. And he described it in this way. He said he described it as man remaining man, but using his intelligence to speed up evolution, basically. As something to that effect. It was in his... a piece that he wrote called New Bottles for New Wine. But of course, Julian Huxley was an ardent eugenicist, very high-level, prominent eugenicist. He's gotten a long list of awards from all the eugenics societies. He's high-ranking member in many of them. And the idea of eugenics itself is it's about taking human evolution into human hands and speeding it up through what they believe is the understanding of genetics. And of course, with the old eugenic method is to breed certain people with other certain people for specific reasons, for specific genetic traits that they have. And doing this is it's akin to breeding dogs, which again Julian Huxley writes about, and many other eugenicists are. They're always talking about breeding dogs and how and there's so many points just with eugenics itself. I could go on and on with like the little things they write in their books, like, oh yeah, the civilized countries, they're so good at breeding dogs and the uncivilized countries don't. And like and at the same time, when they talk about breeding dogs, they say they bring out the cruel and very violent nature of the eugenic creed itself. They're like, oh yeah, you just dispose of all the runts of the litter, basically. Yeah, you get rid of those to perfect the type. And they just say this, like, oh yeah, you just kill off all the useless ones when you're breeding the dogs, and then you get the perfect breed in the end. But it's totally ruthless, totally violent, total control freak mentality that doesn't even work out, doesn't even create evolution to begin with. It degenerates genetics, and this it's total control freak mentality that doesn't even work. But being a control freak, the control freak cannot admit that they are wrong, so they just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and the power of their will never be you can never stop the power of their will, because they honestly believe they're right, because their eugenics again is a religion, and this is a religious thing. And I don't know if I got to the tie to modern transhumanism there, but I'm sure we could further dig into this.
yeah, but it's kind of it's a psychopathic mindset, isn't it? And if you look at eugenics and the kind of people who are backing that, and the kind of offices that they held, and the kind of influence that they had, this is a network that goes back quite a long time. And not only is it to do with eugenics, but eugenics is essentially something that was kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It was kind of legitimized through Darwinism. You know, it had been around as kind of almost like a theology for a lot longer, but it was kind of legitimized and really brought forward and popularized through Darwin, wasn't it?
And the idea of scientism is big in this too. Science as religion, and very much so. Yeah. With Darwin, even the family connections in the promotion of these ideas, we see the connection between the families with Galton, Sir Francis Galton, advocating the idea of eugenics. He was the first one to really like write the books and put the idea out there. He was closely related to Charles Galton Darwin. I think they were like second cousins or something. They're cousins, I do believe. And so that's all in the same family. And of course, you have the Huxley family involved in this. Once again, from the very beginning of Darwinism, T.H. Huxley, Julian Huxley's father, was not father, but grandfather, I'm sorry. He was Darwin's bulldog, because he was the spokesman for Darwin and Darwinism. He was the guy there at the Royal Society saying, like, look, we got to get this idea through. And what you don't learn in history is that, popular history at least, is that the reason that they had to push the idea of Darwinism is because it's an agenda. It's agenda packaged as science, and it is also a religion, as we're saying too. It's a religion, and now in a modern day sense, to take it to where we are now, Darwinism and genetics, well, they've come a long way, but now the idea of Darwinistic evolution is a religious idea to most people, because you're like, oh yeah, that's just true. Like, and that's that. It's like, oh yeah, evolution, Darwinian evolution is a fact, and that's about it. That's where the conversation goes with the average person. You can't say, well, what about this, or like, what about you can't have a conversation about any intricacies or any details. It's all just, oh yeah, that's science. So they get us to believe that this is science, and eugenics as well, substantiated by Darwinism, science. Eugenics is pseudoscience, so it's legitimated by what we believe is science. And at a time, eugenics was totally mainstream in the 1920s. There, that all the major university genetics guys, they were like, oh yeah, they were espousing eugenics, like, oh yeah, this is, and also the social aspects of eugenics. They were kind of making this push for making it a political thing and politicizing their science, their scientific religion. It's so science, religion, politics, it's all the same thing. It's all about agendas. It's all about putting your ideas out there and forcing people to just believe them and not question them, not dissect them as you should, because that's what a person who has critical thinking ability does. You dissect things and go, okay, well, you can't just come out here and flatly tell me that this broad topic is just fact. That's not how things work. It's far more detailed than that.
Yeah, but that's what's happened. It's incredible how eugenics, and well, not eugenics, but Darwinism has been basically turned into an entire belief system just through repetition and through literature and through more repetition and through generational handing down of beliefs and ideologies, to the point now where, I mean, it basically is an entire belief system. I mean, you can't have an argument with somebody about this because, it's just true. As you say, it's just true. We all know that. It's common sense. It's common knowledge, Mm-hmm. So it's amazing what you can do if you repeat something enough with the right authority figures. And, of course, you've had these people come out throughout the ages who've kind of been the scientific heroes. You've had Darwin, who was picked by the Royal Society to legitimize it. And then, today we've got the equivalent of which is kind of like, well, we had Bertrand Russell as well, and then of course we've now got Richard Dawkins as well, mm-hmm. And there's so many holes in what they're saying. I mean, these guys, I mean, the kind of the personality type you were describing before were just massive egos who could just
the audacity of these guys just declaring and saying I'm right, and then people actually sitting there and soaking it up, saying he's right, and then they're the people repeating what the guy in the podium saying are just expanding the problem. Like, no, he isn't right. He's just saying something that he wants you to believe. Like, nobody is right in everything. They're not taking into consideration the fact that subjective reality is a powerful thing, and that at any given time you can make anything true in people's minds just by taking authority, just by saying you have it. It's ridiculous.
I was going to say, what you were saying there earlier on about it being an agenda. It's amazing when you look at how it's all structured. I mean, it's so well coordinated what they're doing just now. The sort of direction we're going in. When you look at the media that we were talking about earlier on, how so well coordinated through music videos, everything. I mean, people are so well managed today that. They are quite naive in the sense that they think they're going towards a sort of a benevolent utopia when the establishment has sort of other plans,
Totally, yeah. And
so I mean, they have said in their books, like there was one book, it escapes me now, but they were talking about how they wanted to perfect the workforce, and the establishment themselves would sort of steer the ship, while they would perfect the workers below. I find it amazing that the way things are going just now.
It is, and like you pointed out, it's the way to understand that this is an agenda, which it very much is. There are many different agendas that are actually all part of one agenda when you connect the dots. it's what we're doing. What we have to do is actually connect the dots. That's what we have to do to counteract the negative effects, possible effects of these agendas actually going through. We have to see that there are patterns in things, and the patterns are the keys to the agendas. When you see something over and over and over again, you see the same themes pop up in films, the same ideas, the same even like corny slogans repeated in not just one place, but like in what appear to be totally different avenues. Like you'll have a pop star up on stage saying, we have to be green and reduce our carbon footprint. And then you see also a politician saying the same thing. We have to notice the patterns there and understand that, nothing in this world happens in a vacuum, and everything's interconnected. And yes, there are agendas, and it behooves us to understand what they are, where they come from, what they mean, why they're being promoted, and yeah, that's what we're doing right now.
I know it's amazing what you're saying there regarding the green agenda, because the more you study this, you realize that there is definitely a connection between the green agenda and the transhumanism as well.
Yeah, there really is. And again, that's a connection that most people wouldn't make. They'd be like, oh yeah, sustainable development, that's one thing. High technology, that's another. But they go together quite neatly. And again, spokespeople like Ray Kurzweil get up there and they talk about how we're going to have nano-enhanced solar panels and that's going to save the earth and all this. And so that's one aspect. And you also have the government documents that get into converging technologies literally saying, like, this is the way that we're going to save the earth. We're going to do it with these converging technologies. So we have to, that's just one aspect of what converging technology is going to be used for, is sustainable development.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it really does. It blows me away just thinking about it all. It really does.
Yeah, it does. And it's amazing because, again, with the promotion of these things, you see it sometimes they'll go as far to promote all these ideas all in one thing. Like there's a festival coming up here in Santa Monica, California called the New World Fest. It was supposed to be in June. It's going to be in October now, I think. New World Fest, that's an interesting name to begin with, but it's more interesting to see what they're promoting at it. Number one, they're promoting the greening and sustainable development and all that. But they also mix in high technology in this, and they have even new age spiritual stuff that they say they're going to have things with that. And you'll see spokespeople that at least for me, I've seen these same spokespeople pop up before. They're having Ed Begley Jr. Do something there, and he's appeared at many transhuman events. He's a big kind of celebrity. He's a celebrity voice that they use to promote transhumanism because he himself is into the idea. I mean, I'm sure he is. I don't doubt that. But so I'm sure he'll be up there giving a transhumanist spiel at this New World Fest. But it's the mixing of New Age spirituality, of the green agenda, and of transhumanism all in one area. So, and yeah, it's just amazing. We see this over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's it's amazing how well coordinated it is when you look at these different areas, as you're saying, because there are so many different areas. And when you see what's happening today with this big technological revolution and so many of these different agendas kind of being woven into this basically eugenics agenda, you really realize that the groundwork for this was laid a long time ago, and I'm not sure if you've seen the documentary The Net. It's called The Net, and it's subtitled The Unabomber, LSD, and the Internet. It's basically a German documentary about Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and it goes to his past and his history and the kind of people that he was involved with and the ideas that were going around back in the 60s to do with cybernetics and LSD and technology and how the military got involved. when you really look at the technological setup that was going on back then, it makes you realize how well planned for it is. And one of the most interesting things when you look at Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, is that he's basically served as this kind of symbol for anti-technology. He's kind of been the heroic martyr for these I'm not sure what you'd call them, but the ultra conservative Luddite people, whoever they are.
Yeah.
And it's almost as if they've deliberately created the dialectic in planning for what was coming. Because at this time when cybernetics was coming out, and they realized that they were going to be building a world wide web where everything could be connected, and I'm sure some people realized ahead of time that this would eventually transform into the transhuman technologies, and there would eventually be the kind of technology we're seeing now. It's like they've actually created their own enemy to basically make sure that the argument on transhumanism stays. You're either with it and you're pro and you support it and you don't question it, or you're a Unabomber,
Yes, absolutely. And that film, The Net, is excellent. I did see an hour's worth of it. Is it longer than an hour? Because it ended abruptly.
I think it's an hour and 45 minutes, maybe an hour and 50 minutes, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the copy I have was just part of it, but it was amazing because it does a really good job connecting these dots that we're talking about and saying how, like, the hippie movement, LSD, the military, big universities, cybernetics, and art, they all intertwine. And it's so good at depicting that, because that's really how our world works. Like, it's not just like it's not all these separate things working in their own little spheres, but rather it's all kind of like one symbiotic thing. And again, with Ted Kaczynski, you're right. He is definitely the symbol now. He is a symbol for just anti-technological society thought. And the big problem, what they use him for, is to totally throw out amazing intellectual arguments, the likes of which are like Jacques Ellul's Technological Society, the book. I know that they've mentioned in news reports that Kaczynski loved that book. He loved the Technological Society, which is an amazing book. So they get to throw wonderful pieces like that, wonderful social criticisms out the window, because this guy did terrorist acts. And so, yeah, again, you also link the idea of somebody who just questions technology to terrorism. So we get the whole terrorism thing, which terrorism links into this whole transhuman thing fundamentally as well. So fundamental, and people don't... We could go on and on about how terrorism and national security and the like fits into this whole agenda, and that's something that people really... they will never talk about, they don't understand, they don't want to talk about, and it's very taboo, and that's the real danger of where we're going, is this whole security state they're building up.
That's right. And just interestingly, on the note of how terrorism relates to transhumanism, you just reminded me of a film I saw recently called Source Code. Have you seen that?
Source Code? No.
Oh, yeah, I really recommend it. It's basically a film about a guy who is basically mortally wounded in Afghanistan flying a helicopter, and he is basically his body and his mind become part of some heinous military experiment where his brain can be basically transported back in time, or his consciousness rather can be transported back in time into the body of another person, and he can inhabit that body and use it to do reconnaissance. And so basically he's sent back in time to try and prevent a bomb blowing up on a train. So it's all very modern, it's very up to date, and of course the bomb is sorry, there's a bit of a spoiler for people who haven't seen it, but the bomber turns out to be this Ted Kaczynski type. This guy makes a big speech about how technology is destroying everything, and we need to ruin things, and we need to bring everything down to ashes and then start from scratch again, because this world is hell. And he's kind of like a young white male as well.
Yes.
So Yeah, big key there, definitely. That there's little snippets in the film about how this terrorist was he was known to be posting blogs and criticizing the government. So
Yeah.
it's all in there. It's really all in there. It's a big link to terrorism. As you say, we could go on about it for a long time, but what would you say are the kind of maybe the few main links, the few main connections that are really important?
Sure. Well, the establishment of converging technologies, developing them and creating a transhumanized world even, and a world where there's nanotechnology, high nanotechnology used in medicine, in, every field of human existence. This creates a security risk, the creation of these technologies, because they're so powerful. They have the power in the wrong hands to create massive destruction. And so we have set up a situation where a terrorist organization can easily cook up a biological weapon in their own basement, or they can steal somebody's identity, or they can hack into a brain chip. And, it's all those evil hackers and terrorist organization. And with this, that's just how it goes. If you develop these things, these threats exist. And the thing to understand about these threats is the concept of false flag terrorism, how it is a fact of history. Governments use terrorism to legitimate basically taking the freedom of the public away. So in a world where you develop these technologies, I believe where it's going is a government, an authoritarian government, can rise to power and legitimize itself as being the protector figure. Again, this father figure, like the Terminator, it gets to be the protector father figure because there's all this danger, and we have to regulate everything. And it's so funny. The transhumanists think like it's going to be some sort of libertarian dream come true. Like, oh, we're going to be so free and technology will allow us to do anything. No, it won't, because it'll all be controlled by the government because of safety and security, because it's such a safety and security risk. You have to tightly regulate everything, regulate people's lives to the tiniest little degree, because these technologies become a part of their very biology. And so we get an authoritarian government, and that legitimizes itself as providing safety and security. And that's a direct evolution out of where all the terror scaring, because all this false flag terrorism that's happened in our time, that's exactly what it is. Let's call it for what it is. It's all leading up to that, and the technological agendas feed into that in that way, because that's where they're going with all this. That's the direction. I mean, that's it. I'm totally convinced of it myself.
Yeah. And it's going to be amazing to see the kinds of technology that they're going to be able to justify through this fake terrorist threat, such as the whole RFID thing, and the biomimetics and the security cameras. And they've even installed those in some airports in the US now, where we've got these, I think it's, the biomimetic camera that will look at a person's body movements and maybe do like infrared on their heat and stuff like that. And it will actually run a probability analysis to determine whether that person is likely to commit a crime. So it's kind of like Minority Report, pre-crime situation that's actually being rolled out for real. This stuff's already here. And of course, it's, to prevent terrorism, so you can get arrested for something you haven't done, They do mention these ideas specifically in government reports as well. They say that that they want to understand the motivations of people and of groups. There's a section in that NBIC report that I get into in the Age of Transitions that gets into this specifically. But yeah, they basically want to enact pre-crime through total knowledge, what they can claim as knowledge at least, of what somebody's going to do ahead of time. Like, oh, we can tell that he's going to do something. But again, that's taking authority where you cannot predict the future. You can pretend like you have some technology that allows you to do that,
But at the end of the day, it only operates because you're scaring everybody to death into... You're going off fear because, like, oh, look, these terrorists are out there. We have to know what they're thinking ahead of time. And that also means we have to monitor you because, well, you know, anyone's a potential terrorist. You saw Ted Kaczynski. He was an intelligent white man that was, you know, he went to college and totally unsuspecting, or so it seems. So we have to watch everybody. We have to do it now. So yeah, definitely, that's what they want to do, and they put it in writing in these government reports. I mean, this isn't me even saying this. Like, it's not my opinion saying, oh yeah, this is the agenda. It's in the government documents. So I mean, I have that specific one on my website if anybody cares to read it.
Yeah, no, we've both looked at that document. Obviously, it's a really important one because it does detail exactly what capability they've got now, and where it could be going in the future. And if obviously the golden rule with these people is that if they're talking about something now, it means they probably did it 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So what they've got now, I mean, it almost doesn't bear thinking about in a way. So just as we sort of begin to round things up for the first hour before we take our break, Aaron, I just wanted to get into a few questions about, I mean, if you wanted to just round up, what are the kind of maybe 3 or 4 key areas of transhumanistic technology that are most important? I mean, we've got chips, we've got AI, and we've got a lot of sort of drugs as well. I mean, drugs and pharmaceuticals play into this a lot too. But what would you say are some of the main things that are of most concerning to us at the moment that are kind of being rolled out?
I would say that AI is a big one because, again, it's very misunderstood. So many narrow AI systems out there doing many tasks that we don't ever talk about. We're not consciously aware of how many AI systems are at work in our world today and basically monitoring us. They are the surveillance systems, the intelligence systems behind the surveillance systems to make sense of massive amounts of mined data. So that's a big one. And I would say, yeah, the idea of cybernetics is huge because, again, this fits into medicine as well. Just the implantation of technologies and the merging of genetics with machines. And we can see this being promoted very much now, and it is coming. And it will affect medicine, as I say. And I don't know, they're also important. I guess virtual reality too, because we're already living within virtual reality and we don't even realize it. It's just with the transhuman idea, it's about perfecting the virtual reality we're already in and kind of perpetuating it in a scientific manner, perpetuating a false reality, creating, as an artist, your idea of an idealized reality and perpetuating it indefinitely, and kind of, in a way, forcing it on people without not being you're not totally being forceful in that the people actually enjoy accepting the false reality. They enjoy living in there because they've been convinced that actual reality sucks, basically. It's terrible.
Yeah. Obviously, there's things that we can all see if we're watching what's happening outside the window. Yeah. But obviously, we've got a lot more to get into, and there's a number of different things that we'd like to talk about in the next hour. But for now, we'll just take a quick break, and we'll see you on the other side.